making up giant future projections about revenues, most of the times VCs can see right through that, right? So if you say, in my first year, I'm going to make $1 million. In my second year, I'm going to make $100 million. That's something that VCs will spot immediately and say, okay, you really haven't, done the math or shown the work as to how you're going to be scaling up.
Personal question for me. You talk about angel investors and foundation families. Where do you find those? Because I don't live in my apartment. Where can I find one of those? Because I need some of those.
The companies that I have seen be successful and go through multiple rounds of financing, they have clean corporate governance. So I mean, clean housekeeping. Essentially, their legal structure is clean.
Right.
There are no issues there. They have clean ownership of their IP.
Right.
They have no co-founder issues. There's no fighting or squabbling. They have a very clean pitch deck that the investors can easily understand and decipher. And then, at the end of the day, though, the biggest thing is having...
Around the clock, I get to it. Don't take no breaks, I just do it. Just watch me work, I prove it. I was born with a gift, got the blueprint, top of the class like a...
Hey, what's up, good people? Welcome back to another Student Entrepreneur episode. I am your host, Zik Nwanganga, the best storyteller in the city. I'm gonna keep saying that because it's my show. But hey, on this show, as you know, we're bringing entrepreneurs to hear their stories of how they scale their company from 0 to 100, so you can learn from them and actually maybe be inspired to start your own company. On today's show, though, we're switching gears a little bit, so I'm excited to have the guests. We're going, I'm gonna give you some juice today, so we're going deep today. But before I go into the show, I want to say shout out to Casey Sourceling for sponsoring this episode. If you're a founder, tech founder, entrepreneur, whatever you do for your business, if you want to find resources for funding, investing, scaling, go to casesourceling.com and find the resources. The guest I have today is an attorney from Polsinelli. He is, when I say entrepreneurship, when I say legal advice, he is the best in the city. So help me make welcome the one and only Chris Simpson. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
I feel great. I'm really excited to be here. I love what City Entrepreneur is doing, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to chat with you today.
Thank you. I know that for sure this episode is going to be valuable for all our entrepreneurs, myself included, because as you know, you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, we go ahead first, and then we think about what happens behind. And that doesn't work always all the time. But Chris, for those who don't know who you are, give a bit of bio of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a shareholder at Polsinelli. I practice out of our venture capital and emerging growth practice group. And so what that means is that I work with founders who are just organizing or incorporating their companies, help them through that process, work with them through their first round of outside financing, whether it be a convertible note or a SAFE, super simple agreement for future equity, which I'm sure we might talk about later. Also help them scale through Series A, Series B, Series C. The companies that I work with can be raising anything from $100,000 to $100 million. And so our goal at Polsinelli and the goal of my practice is to help my clients scale up, achieve their goals, and get to the places where they want to be.
Yeah, no, I need that because when people think of like big law firms like Polsinelli,
yep,
they don't even know that as a company you raise $100K, you can actually get legal advice. So I'm glad that you said that because that's so important. So tell me this. I want this interview to be all down to the basics because I don't know the legalese and I know my others don't know the legalese of everything. But I want to ask you this. When you look at entrepreneurs who are raising $100K, maybe to $500K, what are some things you've seen in the industry that they need to be looking out for or where they should be focusing on and some mistakes that you've seen them make?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing if you're an entrepreneur, a founder that is looking to raise money from maybe angel investors or friends and family,
right,
or potential small seed funds, you want to have your legal structure fully and properly set up, right? And so that means that you want to either be incorporated as a corporation or organized as a limited liability company.
Right,
we need to have you need to have your company organized and in legal standing in either the state of Missouri or the state of Kansas. The state of Delaware is also a common state in which entities are incorporated. Furthermore, Zeke, for what it's worth, if you are a founder that has a co-founder or there's more than one founder,
right,
you want to start to think about how that relationship's going to work, right? Are you going to split the company down the middle 50-50? What's going to happen if one of you decides you no longer want to, be part of this endeavor?
Right.
And so a lot of times when we are talking with our clients or potential clients that are looking to raise capital, that's the first thing that we ask them about is, have you, gone through the process of putting in place legal paperwork that will give your investors that comfort and assurance that they are putting money into a company that has, the structure properly put into place.
So what would you say are some legal issues that entrepreneurs should consider when trying to scale? They should have in mind before even getting into any conversations?
Yeah. So when you're an entrepreneur, and let's say that you've set up a company, you have a company in place, then you start to think about, how are you protecting the secret sauce, or protecting the great idea or product that you have?
Right.
And that is when you start to think about, okay, how are we protecting our intellectual property? That is another issue that investors will diligence or ask you about as you start to scale up. And so often, all the times when you're a founder or you have co-founders, you want to be executing IP assignment agreements to make sure that the company that your investors are investing in own the IP that you hold to be owned by the company.
Right.
So let's say you have an awesome, life sciences idea, or you have a great idea regarding a tech stack or other type of product. We want to make sure that the company owns that, and then anyone who's provided services to the company or on your behalf has signed an assignment agreement.
Shout out to Polsinelli for sponsoring this episode. Polsinelli is one of the top law firms in the U.S. Just recently, they were nationally recognized on the 2024 Best Law Firms list by Best Lawyers in 37 practices and regionally in 63 practices. So if you own a tech, finance, healthcare, real estate, life sciences, or private equity company, pull up to Polsinelli and they'll get you all your legal solutions that you need. So now I want to shift gears a little bit, because I know you mentioned this VC, venture capital.
Yep.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs are excited about VC. A lot of entrepreneurs are hesitant because sometimes I feel like the VCs kind of hold you down, or because they have their own goals, you have your own goals. That's my fear. But like, when you're thinking of entrepreneurs or founders returning against a VC, what are the right ways to get into conversations where you don't feel like they're tying you down?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And we represent a number of venture capital, growth capital, and private equity funds. And so those funds are investing anywhere from $1 million to, again, $100 million. And so a lot of times, when you are first getting off of the ground and you've stood up your company and you have this great idea, but you'd say you don't have a lot of revenues yet or any revenues yet, you can certainly start the conversations with venture capital funds in this area, but they're not going to be interested in investing in you until you've reached a certain milestone or until you've reached a certain revenue level. And that's the point in time at which they will become interested and want to talk to you. That's why, especially in the greater Kansas City area, the angel network, where, high net worth individuals or other successful persons or family foundations or offices becomes a really, from my perspective, a really good and great way to raise capital early, $100,000 here, or $200,000 there, to allow you to scale up, to get to that point where you are, able to speak with VCs. And even if you get to that point where you're able to speak with VCs, maybe you don't want to take their money in because maybe you don't want to be diluted down, right? Because when a venture capital fund comes in and they want to invest in you, they're expecting to receive at least 20% ownership in your business. They will expect to have a board seat. They will have certain rights with respect to how you operate the business. And that, speaking as someone who represents funds, that's fair, right? They're taking a risk on an early stage company. They're looking for, meaningful returns. And so they want to make sure that their money is protected.
Personal question for me. You talk about angel investors and foundation families. Where do you find those? Because I don't live in my apartment. Where can I find one of those? Because I need some of those.
Totally fair. So the greater Kansas City area, look, there's a lot of very successful companies, right? And those successful companies will throw off money to families and founders and successful business persons. I think that there are a decent number of resources here in the greater Kansas City area. For example, Polsinelli, we put on a panel series about potential ends to these types of angel networks. I can't disclose necessarily all the angles that we have with right now.
Yes. Angels like to be kept secret.
Like to be kept secret.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes. I didn't need a card to let it.
Yeah. But I think what you do and a number of other, for example, Flyover Capital, who we have a relationship with, they're doing a Mid by Midwest event in November. Right. There are a number of events that occur in Kansas City that are attended by angel investors or other investors. And I think it's a matter of, if you're a founder and you want to start talking to these people, it's up to you to do a little bit of the legwork to find where they're at. Look for events that are held by UMKC, for example, and in other institutions like that can help you start to network with those types of angels.
So let me take it back a little bit more. Because you said a lot of good things I would definitely want to touch on. IP, right? You mentioned IP.
Yeah.
First, how do you know if you have IP, and how early should you start protecting your IP before you even get into the game?
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good question. And so when I think of IP can mean a lot of things, right? Intellectual property can mean patents or copyrights or trademarks. It can also just mean general ideas, right? The things that you have an idea on, a work plan, a model that isn't maybe patentable, but that is a trade secret, kind of like the Coca-Cola recipe, right? That is all IP. And so I think the first things first is, as we touched upon briefly at the beginning, once you have incorporated or organized a company, you want to make sure that you and your co-founders are essentially agreeing that, okay, any conversations that we have around our business, anything that we think of, anything that we do is going to be automatically assigned to the company. Okay. And so what often happens, and where we've seen certain companies that had a lot of potential get derailed, is when they bring in outside, independent contractors or consultants, and they don't have those independent contractors or consultants sign up to full legal agreements. It's just a handshake agreement, a relationship, and that independent contractor never assigns over any of the work that they've done for the company. And if that happens and the independent contractor or consultant hasn't assigned their work, then they still own that work. And you'll be involved in a potential dispute between the company and the contractor, who might decide, hey, and this is all worst case scenario, right? We're talking about a very cynical approach. But that contractor could say, okay, well, this thing that you paid me to do is awesome. I'm going to run with it. And I didn't have to sign an agreement to assign my work over to you. That means I can do whatever I want with it.
Right. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I want us to talk about the worst case scenario.
Exactly.
And that way you avoid that.
Yep.
Because as entrepreneurs, we are too optimistic. But everything's going to work out right. I'm going to shake your hand and we should be good to go.
It's exactly right. Exactly right. And that's why making sure that you have honest conversations with your co-founders, if you have co-founders, is so important, right? Because let's say, even if you think that you're going to be the best of friends or best partners for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, we have seen, our fair share at Polsinelli of founder disputes. And they can happen within 2 months after the company has been incorporated, or they can happen 5 years after the company has been incorporated.
Wow.
And so you want to be very practical and realistic with your co-founders, even if they are, your best friends.
Yeah. So one of the things that I am not the best at, I don't like that much, is contract.
Yep.
And I know you probably read a fair share of contracts.
Yep.
What are some things you've seen, or some mistakes you've seen entrepreneurs are making, and how can they avoid making those mistakes when it comes to contract? With
respect to contracts between founders and the company, some of you might be familiar with the concept of vesting, when equity vests over time, right? And so I would always advise that if you are a founder with a co-founder or co-founders, that you have vesting provisions baked into your founder's agreement. Okay. And what that means is that if, let's say, Zik, you have a co-founder that you love, but in 12 months he or she decides they no longer want to work with you on the business, their equity can be repurchased by the company at a nominal value.
And I know, so let me know if this is outside of your scope. When it comes to tax strategies and on the legal side, are there some advice you have for entrepreneurs to be able to at least maximize their taxes and also stay away from making legal mistakes that come to haunt them down the line?
Yeah, for sure. And so I think a lot of times when you are an entrepreneur and you're building a business that you want to scale up, there are typically two ways to approach the tax structure, right? You can be an LLC and be essentially taxed as a partnership. And so the taxes on the LLC flow through or pass through the company up to the partners, the owners. That is for a majority, I would say, of entrepreneurs, that's probably the best way to set up your tax structure, because that allows you as a founder on a personal level to take losses on your taxes. So you can deduct losses at the company level on your personal tax returns. The only other thing I would say, the other way is to be taxed as a C corporation, which is a level of double taxation. The corporation is taxed on any revenues that it has, and then the stockholders are taxed if the corporation distributes dividends or proceeds up to them. The reason why I bring this up is because there are certain venture capital funds that only invest in C corporations as opposed to partnerships or LLCs. And so in terms of long-term planning, if you think that you will seriously pursue venture capital investments, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the road, you should seriously consider, the pros and cons of being an LLC versus a C corporation. And that's a conversation that we have with all of our clients.
So on that C-Corp, S-Corp, LLC, this might be a twofold question.
Yeah.
The one question is, can you go from LLC, S-Corp to C-Corp? Can you move like that? And secondly, what would you say, just to be on the safe side for like angel investors or VC companies trying to invest, what should we, like as entrepreneurs, is it C-Corp or S-Corp, just to be on the safe side where you are ready, so you don't have to go through the legal when it gets to that point? Yeah,
it's a great question. And so we will often have clients that they're organized as LLCs, taxed as partnerships, and in certain limited instances, taxed as S corporations. You can convert a partnership into a C corporation on a relatively straightforward basis, particularly if you are an early stage company and don't have a lot of revenues and have not incurred a lot of losses. That is a function of state law. And so you can pretty efficiently do that with the right legal counsel. When you are speaking with angel investors or high net worth individuals about, maybe that first round of financing, generally speaking, I see them more often than not being okay with investing in an LLC or a partnership. And it's really when you are starting to speak with the bigger funds, the flyover capitals or other, venture capital funds that have mandates from their limited partners and might have restrictions on how they invest, that you need to start to think about and worry about whether or not you should be a C corporation. If you know that you are shooting to receive venture capital money, and again, that's not for everyone, but if you know that you're going to be going to venture funds, then we typically advise just stand up as a C corporation at the very beginning. If you're not sure, if let's say you think you might only need to raise a few $100,000 from angel investors and maybe you can, borrow some money, get lines of credit from banks, then you're probably going to be okay being an LLC taxed as a partnership.
So I know that when you do panels, you are often asked a lot about the legal stuff. And the question I'm about to ask you probably have not gotten this before, but I'm asking you this from your standpoint, Chris. Tell me, working with Polsinelli, helping entrepreneurs, what is it in for Chris? Why is Chris doing this? Why is this important to Chris?
Yeah, well, so one, I cut my teeth working primarily at a Boston private equity shop where I was only representing funds or investors, right? And that's really good, interesting work, but it starts to just become a blur and you move very, very quickly. When I moved back from Boston to Kansas City and started working again at Polsinelli in 2018, I was just really enamored and proud of the entrepreneur ecosystem that we have here in KC. And so for me, and I've done this with a number of clients and companies where I have helped them incorporate, go through multiple rounds of financings and have either a really great exit transaction or sale, or are continuing to be revenue generating, doing very well. And so for me, I really, really enjoy in fact, I love working with founders who have a great idea. I love helping support them and helping them build up the scaffolding that they need to grow their idea into a viable business.
So since 2018 till now, two things. What have you seen that's been working in the ecosystem? And what do you think can be improved, or what do you think entrepreneurs are needing more of as have conversations in the community?
Yeah, so I think that here in Kansas City or in the greater Midwest, I think that we are continuing to work to promote Kansas City or the greater Midwest as a real opportunity for investment, right? We have so many incredible potential founders or founders. We have so many smart people that are working in tech. And so I think that we have done a good job. We can, and this is as a community, we've done a good job of, I think promoting from the inside. I think we can do a better job of telling the outside world. And for example, investors in Silicon Valley or New York City or Boston, that there is a tremendous amount of talent here. And there's a tremendous amount of ideas that are investable. And I think that, over the past 3 to 4 years, the venture market has fluctuated. We were, right after COVID, there was a lot of money being invested. Then there was a slight downturn over the past, 24 months or so. And so capital dried up a little bit.
Right.
And so I think continuing to spread the word outside of KC, there's a lot of great talent and great ideas.
How do you think we can do that though? Because I feel like a lot of things that are in Kansas City are kind of trapped in this ecosystem where I feel like you have to be in it to know what's going on.
Yeah, and so I think that's where, and it's part of why I love coming on this this show and also doing other activities. So for example, Polsinelli is a national law firm. A lot of it candidly kind of falls on us as service providers or on the funds that are based in Kansas City. Like for example, I know I keep on referencing them, but Flyover Capital, they're a great partner of Polsinelli. It's on us to make sure that, the clients and the funds that we have connections with and relationships that are located outside of Kansas City, it's up to us to let them know, hey, there are some really great founders or companies here in KC, and you should come in here and take a look, and we'll help you, be introduced to those rock stars.
Yeah, so let's go into advice for entrepreneurs, because I know you're probably in a lot of rooms where bills are made, hands are shut, money is go back and forth. Yeah. What would you advise entrepreneurs who are looking at hopefully scaling their company, get into that VC funding, to have in mind, or how should they present themselves in a deal where they're not taken advantage of, or they should be well prepared coming into the conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that, before you start to have chats with true, meetings where you're presenting a pitch deck with VCs, I think it's certainly appropriate to do as much as you can to leverage your network, talk to people. I mean, I'm always glad and happy to have coffee with anyone who'd like to just chat about how the processes work. If you're a founder and you don't really know where to start, talk with someone or find someone that has been through the process before. And so you understand, how the roadmap is going to play out. I would also say too that before you have a meeting with, a big potential investor or a group of angel investors, have, your pitch down very cold, have your pitch deck be, very clean and easily followable, so that when you go into a meeting with a potential investor, whether again, it's an angel network or VC fund, you're able to explain to them your business and they get it. I would also say too that, look, I don't know if anyone who's watching this has watched Silicon Valley, the HBO TV show, making up giant future projections about revenues. Most of the times VCs can see right through that, right? So if you say, in my first year, I'm going to make $1 million. In my second year, I'm going to make $100 million. That's something that VCs will spot immediately and say, okay, you really haven't, done the math or shown the work as to how you're going to be scaling up. It can't just be aspirational. You need to be able to explain and show how this company is going to be successful in the future.
All right. If you could give on a very more tangible summation of entrepreneurs who make it through VC funding and get good funding and then actually scale to success, what would you say that you've heard in their pitch or in their story that really has worked? Maybe it's worked 5 times. That means there's something there, if you could say.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I think every company is going to be a little bit different,
right.
But I think that the companies that I have seen be successful and go through multiple rounds of financing, they have clean corporate governance. So I mean, clean housekeeping. Essentially, their legal structure is clean.
Okay.
There are no issues there. They have clean ownership of their IP.
Right.
They have no co-founder issues. There's no fighting or squabbling. They have a very clean pitch deck that the investors can easily understand and decipher. And then, at the end of the day, though, the biggest thing is having an idea that, speaks to the investors.
Right.
I think that, that's really where the rubber truly meets the road. But if you are not able to tell the story and present the pitch deck and present the business idea cleanly, then your investors aren't going to be able to fully follow it. So I guess having said all that, I think the best thing and the most important thing that I've seen founders do is being able to make an elevator pitch, that cleanly and properly describes what they're trying to do and how they will do it when speaking with investors.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chris. Is there anything I'm leaving on the table that you like to cover that I didn't bring up in the conversation?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would just say is, and this has been outstanding, and we've been talking primarily about, early stage entrepreneurs. If I could just quickly touch upon, some of the ways that you might raise money early on, even if that's $100,000 or a few $100,000. And so if you are an entrepreneur and you've done your own research, I'm sure you've probably seen terms like convertible notes or simple agreements for future equity. Those are great ways to bring in capital from investors on a relatively efficient basis. What convertible notes are or simple agreements for future equity are security instruments that allow your investors to invest. You're not giving them equity at that point in time. You're giving them a piece of paper that will say, in the future, when we raise a priced equity round, you will be receiving equity at that time. But in the meantime, this convertible note or this safe is acting as a bridge to allow the entrepreneurs and his company or her company to scale up and to grow. The only other thing I would say about convertible notes or safes is if you are raising money on that's probably the time when you really want to start to talk to an attorney who knows their way around
right.
Those instruments.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If you were to say, and this might be my last question, for someone who is trying to build a business for acquisition,
Yep.
what are some things that you have in mind before getting them ready to be able to get into a company to acquire them?
That's a really, really great question. And so if you are building a business and you hope to sell it in the future, right, that's going to require you to have a certain level of revenues.
Right.
The most important thing to do if you're looking to sell a business is to have a very clean company. Again, it starts to go to the same issues that I raised that investors look at. When you are talking with potential acquirers, they're going to go through very, very thorough due diligence on your company. They're going to check every single contract that you've ever entered into.
Right.
And so you want to make sure, again, that your legal housekeeping is in order, that your intellectual property is owned. And generally speaking too, if you are going to go through an acquisition process, that can essentially be like a second job, kind of like how raising money can be a second job for an entrepreneur or founder. And so the more that you can keep your company organized so that your potential buyers down the road can easily access their diligence information, the better.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. And again, shout out to Polsinelli for being able to sponsor this episode, because I think as entrepreneurs, we are always optimistic. We're thinking about the idea, but on the legal side, we are lacking in that. So I think it's important to be able to have all your angles put together, because when you're talking to an investor, they want to make sure you have those things. If you don't have those things, it probably not going to happen.
Yeah, no, thanks, Zik, so much for having me. I really love what you're doing with City Entrepreneur. It's a pleasure to be on this show. And to the extent that anyone has any questions or whatever, like to chat with me, I'm always glad to grab a cup of coffee with someone here in Kansas
What's
City.
your contact? How can people reach out to you?
Yeah, if you search Chris Simpson Polsinelli on Google, you'll find my website and the firm's website. And so please do reach out and we can continue the conversation.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Chris.
Absolutely.
And for those who are watching from home, thank you for tuning in today. It's been another Serial Entrepreneur episode. Thank you. And you know what to do. Share, like. It's your host, Zik Nwanganga. And I'm going to see you in the next episode. Bye-bye for now.